All right, everybody. Welcome to another Compliance Corner. I am Orly.
And I'm Noelle.
And who are you?
I am Carly Logan from Boston Government Services.
Hello, Carly. Carly Logan. So you know we're from Boston. So it's like, are you related to the Logan of Logan Airport?
Maybe.
Maybe, possibly, in theory. So you should know, Carly Logan, maybe of Logan Airport, that you are our first official guest. So that means we have to be really polite.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's oh really? I wish I'd have known that in advance. I could have negotiated this.
You could have negotiated it. So it means we have to keep all our four-letter words under our breath and actually be nice because, we hope you'll bring us home to meet your parents someday.
If you do, I will.
Okay.
We'll do
Promise.
our best.
Noelle's the bigger problem because,
I know.
once you get her started on this compliance stuff, she can get a little bit salty.
And I'll just keep going and going.
So you are our first guest, and so thank you for agreeing to be subjected to our punishment. But we brought you on because you have some really important stuff to tell an audience about Boston Government Services and a little bit about this great event that they were a part of. You were one of the first C3PAOs to achieve C3PAO status, which is really important. And so one of the things we want you to discuss with us today is, what was that process like? What are the lessons learned? And, everyone who's listening to this show, I'm sure, is hanging on with bated breath because they want to know what was your process like and what can they do to kind of learn from your mistakes and your successes and how they should model their own CMMC compliance program in order to get a successful outcome where they are. So, actually, I'm kind of rude. Maybe you don't want to bring me home to your parents. Why don't you first just start off by introducing yourself, Carly, and then tell us a little bit about what BGS does.
Sure. So I'm Carly Logan. I have been around the security and compliance arena since 1992. It's been a long time, over 20 years, since certification and accreditation became mandatory for a lot of federal agencies back in the mid 2000s. And so creating security packages and going through this whole process is kind of second nature to me at this point, really. So I've been doing that for a very long time for different agencies. I actually worked at DC3, the Department of Defense's Cybercrime Center, where I was an instructor for a while. And
right.
Yeah, a lot of good things. You guys can see me on LinkedIn if you want to go look me up there, you can see all of that. And Boston Government Services is a consultant and engineering and technology firm that provides a plethora of security and technology management services to federal agencies and to the commercial sector. And one of those major areas is providing security and compliance. So coming into the CMMC world, we were NIST 853 and helping with getting companies ready for FISMA certifications and the 800 171 already. And so this was just a natural for us to jump in and do.
Yeah, I know you have a couple of slides you want us to share, and you'll just tell me when to jump in with those. But why don't you kind of tell us what were some of the critical lessons you learned? And I know Noelle probably has a couple of questions there as well. But why don't you start off and tell us what a couple of those key questions are?
Sure. So a couple of things that I would say is be prepared. I don't know how your assessment's going to go, your audience's actual assessment, but for us being one of the first, we had a team of like 14 DIBCAC assessors converge upon us to go through the assessment. So there was a lot to it, and they turned over every stone. And so being prepared made it kind of easy in a way. I don't want to say easy, but the more prepared you are, the easier it is to answer every question. And the more you document the answer, so you don't have to go from memory, you just flip to whatever page and reference whatever document, and you're good to go.
So you were like the government compliance equivalent of the Boy Scouts, like you were always prepared.
Well, I don't like not knowing things, so make sure you know
that makes
all
you
of it.
A whole lot different than me. Not Noelle, because Noelle knows everything, but me. It's kind of a question whether they ever let me talk again on this show. Why don't I bring on some slides, because I think, you did a really good job of kind of explaining, some of the documentation and preparation that is needed in order to be ready for this process. And so, one of the things you mentioned when we were preparing for this conversation was the need for a document index.
Yeah, so it's not a requirement. And the things that I'm going to be talking through today are not necessarily a requirement, but we're talking lessons learned and what worked. What did we get actually complimented on because it worked? So one of the things that we did was create a document index. And what we were able to do by doing that is leverage existing headquarters policies and procedures, and not having to reinvent the wheel and create all new policies and procedures. So like in the example here, you can see the company headquarters is listed, and then individual enclave information. HR already had policies. And so by leveraging that and documenting it, it made it real easy to understand. And it made it easier for the assessor to understand where we were pulling our documentation from.
Wow, that's really cool. Noel, you told me you had a question here about kind of how this differs across companies.
So my question, especially since you guys are a C3PAO, is this something that you leverage with people that, I'm assuming you're an RPO as well, or are you guys just focused on C3PAO? Yeah, most people.
We're an RPO as well, yes.
Right. So just for the audience sake, in case you don't know what an RPO is, or a C3PAO, it's a registered practitioner organization or a certified third-party assessor organization, just to make sure. But when you're doing those consultings, is this something that you have as sort of like part of your package with consulting to say, is this what you're recommending to the people that you're working with on the RPO side?
Well, yeah, one of the things that we do up front is find out, are you already certified? Do you have ISO 27001 or 9001 or SOC or PCI or any of those things?
Right.
Send us all of your documents and we'll see what we can use that you already have. So yeah, this is one of the preliminary questions that we ask.
I think that's a really good point that you say that it's preliminary. So I think for those people out there, maybe you're not ready for an RPO yet, maybe you're not ready for consulting yet, but would your recommendation be to the people out there who aren't necessarily ready for consulting would your recommendation be, though, to start kind of at this point, if you've already done those other certifications?
Yeah, so my recommendation is to do two things. And one of them is scope your environment now, not later. Because when you do your scoping, you may be able to skinny it down to a separate standalone little enclave, or it may alter what you think is in scope and what you need to cover. So I would do scoping and grab whatever documentation you can leverage now, even if you don't plan on implementing all of your controls for the next 6 months. Right. That would totally be where you start.
I think that's such good advice. Definitely.
Yep. Let's just kind of go on, and you created some sample policy documentation for us to look at. What should we be taking from this?
So there's a few things here, but one of the most important things is, if you're going to create your policies, to make it easier for the assessor, you should cross-reference exactly what practice that policy statement is covering. That makes it very easy for them to check the box and understand how you are implementing something. If it references procedures, then again, reference that it is going to be implementing some related procedures.
I mean, that's pure gold. I wish you could just like emphasize that, how you're kind of flipping the equation with that very provision of sample documentation, because rather than the assessor being in charge, you're now taking control and you're saying, okay, here's how we meet this particular control. Here's the documentation we have. And so rather than the assessor kind of like trying to figure out how they're going to test you on this, you're saying, here it all is. And you've just saved yourself a whole lot of grief.
That's correct.
That's correct. All right. You heard it here first. You heard it here first. We probably just saved someone out in Milwaukee a whole keg of beer. All right. There you go. And so sample some system-specific procedure. What is this telling us?
So on the last slide, there was a statement about how lockouts are handled across the company. That was like a headquarters type document, and everybody's situation may vary. But you may have a system created specifically for CMMC and handling CUI that can't do that. It's something different. So you may have your own procedures and you may have your own standards locked out. So this is just showing that for people getting into, like for the users in this system per se, this is what you do, and if you have a problem, contact the help desk. So it's a system-specific procedure. You can have both.
Right. But again, the point well taken is, just be as detailed as possible, and, not to poke too much fun at Boy Scouts, but that should kind of be your motto: be prepared. Make sure you have everything documented, well described, and then you are taking control of the conversation and not the assessor.
Well, and there's one more thing about what the assessor will do. When the assessor has the documentation and they're looking through all of this wonderful, rich cross-referencing, it reduces the things they're going to need to see because you've already shown them. And that's just, that's gold.
And something really quick to interject too, just sort of along those same lines. This is something that we've certainly seen with some of our customers who have gone through these audits, and I'm sure you guys had the same thing. Whatever is said in that procedure and whatever is said in that policy and whatever you actually do all need to be the same. Like if you're saying that you are doing this lockout procedure in your policy and then this is exactly how you do it, they need to be able to see that in testing. We've had some very interesting situations with DIVCAC auditors where, one word makes a difference. If you say periodically, but you mean monthly, say monthly, don't just assume anything.
Absolutely true.
Right. So on this one, how's the system security plan? First of all, just to remind people what a system security plan is. We have other videos on SSPs and we'll link to them in the show notes, but just remind people what an SSP is and how it fits into the overall process here.
So did you want me to do it or Noelle?
No,
you go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So
we have to be nice.
Yeah, we have to be polite.
I see. So a system security plan is a set of information about the zone, the whatever is in scope within the assessment boundary, and it describes the system. It talks about the network diagramming and the data flow of how data is going to be passing through the system and all of that. And then it goes into each individual practice, and it's this, what you're looking at right here is an example of control implementation detail. This could be inside of a Word document, it can be inside of an Excel spreadsheet. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, but when you do your control implementation detail, they're going to go through that with an absolute fine-tooth comb. So what you may or may not like when you see this, people like Noelle and I will like it, is we recommend you actually go through down to the section. Like this document, this section, this number addresses exactly this. You take all the doubt out.
Right.
Definitely. I think that's such a good point. You've said it so much in this, and I could not agree more. You want to make it sort of like, I've said this a million times, you want to make your documentation like audit bulletproof. And you want to make sure that an auditor can ask you as few questions as possible and they can look at the documentation and find the answers. And like you said, if you're getting like specific, this is exactly where this is exactly what you want to see, it's really hard for them to have more questions and then, conceivably have a finding or an issue with whatever it is you're doing if they know exactly where to find the answer.
Well, and then something else, like the PreVeil system security plan that I've seen that you provide to your customers, you have like a place where you either document the exact procedure inside of that, which is perfectly fine. There's no requirement that there be a formal official procedure.
Right.
So it may be documented in there. It may be it may be inherited from something else like a headquarters.
Right.
So by going through and doing the detail right down into the section and then even highlighting the way I've done, prior to the actual assessment, it's your cross check, it's your double check. Do we have it all in here? PreVeil said we should insert our company procedure on background checks here. Did we do it? That kind of thing. So
right, exactly. And I really love the idea of highlighting too. I think that's a great idea to go through and highlight, okay, did we actually do these things we said we were going to do? Because again, if you didn't, they will catch you on it.
No, you're making me scared already. All right. And so I think that is it for today. Is there anything else we should know about documentation and getting ready? I think we've talked about a lot of stuff. You know,
Yes, I'd like to throw in a few more things about documentation, just real
oh,
quick.
go ahead, and then we'll finalize the show.
Because there's not a required prescribed format for this, some of your documentation may be in an internal wiki where people put their information that changes often, or it could be checklists, forms, templates. Could be that things are handled through email a certain way and you can prove that it's been done that way. So these are some kind of suggestions on some of this documentation, but the key is you put where you have it so that you know, and then you can prove it. That's really what matters.
Right. And always being prepared.
Always be over prepared.
Over prepared. All right. We are at the end of yet another wonderful episode of PreVeil's Compliance Corner. Why you guys have just wasted another 15 minutes of your afternoon, we don't know why, but it is always a pleasure to have you join us, and we're thankful you did. We're going to have a part 2 of this conversation with Carly, in which we're going to discuss pizza as a service. That's right. We're going to take our hats and try and be Domino's pizza men. So it's an episode not to be missed. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.